Hello, Internet. I'm Josh, and I created this app called My Expense Report. It's a personal finance app for viewing and managing your expenses. I'll first show off the features, and then I'll explain how to use it. There's a transactions page, which has a unifying list of all your transactions. You can filter, you can select and edit, and each transaction has a category and a subcategory. On the monthly report, everything is grouped by month and category. Within each category, it shows red for months that were above average for that category and green for months that were below average. So for example, in February, the food was above average. I can click on it and view all the transactions within that month for the category food. I can also click the header and view a bar chart of all the food transactions. I can click a bar and that'll filter it to that month and view those transactions. I can toggle these subcategories, and then that causes there to be two headers, category and subcategory. So now I have even more fine detail, but it could be a bit overwhelming. There's also an option to show the averages for each category. There's a very similar page for the yearly report, which groups by year. Same features. And then on the dashboard page, we've got a donut chart and a bar chart. The two outer rings of the donut chart represent the current month, in this case May 2024, and the two inner rings represent the monthly average. I can hover and that will show you that category, or if I do one of the two inner rings, it'll be the subcategory. So for example, groceries is a subcategory of food. There's also a bar chart on the right, and when I click one of the items on the bar chart, that will cause the donut chart to update to that current month. So now I'm looking at May of 2023. In this particular month, the current expenses were significantly more than the average. And to make it easier to compare amounts, the inner rings do not go the full 360 degrees. They stop short $1,130 because that's the difference in totals. By doing it this way, amounts that are the same will take up the same angular range. Similarly, if you have a low month, such as this month, here because the current month is lower than the average, the current month doesn't go all the way the full 360. So what I'm showing you right now is a live website that you can go to right now. And when you go to it, you'll see just what I see because it displays sample data whenever you don't have any transactions added. So now what we're going to do is we're going to import transactions, and I'll show you how that process works. The way you import transactions, I guess where you get those transactions from, is from your credit card provider or your bank. You would export activity as a CSV file, and then you can import it here. So I'm going to import April year to date. Begin import. And so the app automatically was able to infer which column was which. In fact, Wells Fargo, which is what this is formatted after, Wells Fargo doesn't even have column headers. It's just the raw data, yet the app is still able to figure out what's what. Another quirky thing that Wells Fargo does is the amounts are negative for most expenses. And so the app detected that most transactions were negative, and it automatically toggled this at the top right, expenses are negative. I'm going to manually toggle that. So now it thinks there's 160 income rows, and I'm going to import it like that. I wouldn't normally do it like that. So now, if I go to the transactions page, all the transactions say their income. So one way to fix that is I'm going to filter it by imported on. Now, because these are all my transactions, I don't need to filter, but if I had existing data that was correct, you can filter like that. I'm going to select all, edit selected, and then there's an option to flip income expense. So basically just negates the amount. I can submit that. So I did that for 164 transactions, and now they're all categorized as other. except there is this automatic payment, which it's interpreting as income. So this is actually when I paid off my credit card, that created a item in the transactions list that I exported. So to fix that, I'm going to copy the name of that. So here's the 4 transactions. So I'm going to select all, and I'm going to delete it. This isn't actually the ideal way to deal with this, but I want to show you the consequences of merely deleting it, so that's what I'll do. So that'll come up later. But now let's try to fix the categorization, because right now everything's uncategorized, and that's not as interesting as the sample data. So one way to fix the categorization is to manually filter, select all, and then assign a manual category. But that method's very slow. There's a much faster way. So when you have uncategorized transactions, there's a button on the dashboard that says Fix Uncategorized. When I click that, this pop-up comes up, and it's a workflow to help create what's called a category rule. A category rule is basically just text that when it matches a transactions, it will assign that transaction a category and subcategory. So for apartment rent, I'm going to assign it the category housing, subcategory rent. I will submit. So I'm going to close this. So now all the transactions that match that rule text will now get assigned housing rent. On the transactions page, it's now assigned housing, and there's an icon which when I hover, it says matched rule apartment rent. So let's go back to Fix Uncategorized, and I'll explain more about how this works. So right now it's trying to make a category rule for this transaction at the top. And then it shows me all the transactions that would be affected by this rule text. This rule text was automatically populated by the rule text suggestions. So these buttons here, when I click it, it automatically updates this input to that suggestion that I clicked on. Usually the initially suggested item is a pretty good match. So then in the category and subcategory, there's buttons below that can autofill the category and subcategory. So I can click housing, and all that did, clicking that button filled in this form. I can click rent, and that filled in this form. Now Walmart's not housing or rent, so I'm going to say food and groceries. Click submit. So now it moved on to the next transaction. So Amazon. So the rule text suggestion is good. Unfortunately, there's no existing category, so I'll make a new one. Okay, so here I want it to be in the housing category, but we're going to add a new subcategory of utility. Again, there's no existing category. So the first couple, it does take a while to type them in. So now food, restaurant. And if you notice, I'm not even bothering with the rule text because the rule text suggestion generally is pretty good. So if I needed to, I could go, like if it started out like that, I might click that. But you just keep going. And this process, unfortunately, can take a while, especially if you have lots of transactions. But once you get your categories, you're mostly just clicking buttons. So here I've already got food and restaurant. So here I'm going to say coffee. Let's add a fun event category. Car insurance. Housing utility. Food restaurant. So now I'm basically not typing because everything's already there. I like to use the MISC category, but all these categories are entirely up to you to decide what categories and subcategories you want. Which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. Almost done. All right, we're done. So if I'm being honest, yours will probably take longer because you probably have more variety in your transactions. So I've now got everything categorized. So the next thing I'll show is what if I have more data for the next month? So if I try to import May 2024 year to date, so this includes January through April, which I already imported. And so when I scroll down, it's going to detect a whole bunch of duplicates and it'll not have it checked, meaning it won't be imported. But if I look carefully, this automatic payment that I manually deleted, it is not being detected as a duplicate because the transaction's gone entirely. So for that reason, it's actually not ideal to delete transactions. Instead, what you would want to do is you would want to hide the transactions. So if I go automatic, so those 4 that I deleted are back. And so instead of deleting, hiding transactions is better because it will still be used to flag imported transactions as potential duplicates. Although instead of manually hiding them, an even better approach would be to have a category rule that is assigned to the hidden category. And what's cool about making a category rule is now any future file that I import that has this automatic payment, that file, those automatic payments will automatically be hidden. So I'll submit that. So now, because I used category rules, most of the transactions from May already match one of my category rules. In fact, there's just one. So now I'm done fixing uncategorized. So as you keep using this app and you amass a lot of category rules, each month, most, if not all of your transactions will be already categorized. So that's why, even though it takes a while to set up, most likely it'll be easy to maintain. So that's basically how to use it. The last thing I want to talk about is how your data is actually stored. And to explain that, I first need to explain that there are 3 different versions of my app. So what I was showing you is the browser-only version, but the app is also available as a desktop app and as a Docker container that you can self-host. And the only way that the 3 versions differ is how they store your data. With the browser-only version, it stores it to local storage. For technical people, that's in the, you can press F12, look at the application, local storage, and here's your data right here. The biggest problem with local storage is that if I were to ever clear my browsing data, so if I go to history, clear browsing data, and if I clear this other site data, that's going to clear everything that I just did. I'm actually going to do that, but before I do it, I want to create a backup of everything I did. So the 2 things I want to do is on the transactions page, I'm going to export everything as backup transactions. And then I'm going to go to the manage category rules, and I'm going to say export to CSV. I've done this a few times. And now with that exported, what did I do? Clear browsing data. If I clear data and I refresh, we're back to sample data because we have no data. So that's one reason why you wouldn't want to use the the web app version. I mean, if you think you might accidentally clear it, but because I made those backups, I can, where's the option to, oh, I can import data. So I'm going to drag the backup transactions I just made. And because there's a category and subcategory header, they'll actually automatically be assigned manual categories. So if I go to the transactions page and look at the info, it says it's a manual category, meaning that the category is basically stored with the transaction. So that works for the existing data, but if I import June's transactions, I don't have the, the category rules. So to fix that, the Manage Category Rules pop-up has an option to import from CSV. So I'm going to drag my category rules that I made, import them, and now it's actually still manually categorized. So I'm going to select everything, remove manual category. You might not want to do this if you've manually categorized stuff. So nothing really has changed, but now when I inspect why it got that category, it's because it matched the rule. So that's really all I have to show. I hope that y'all appreciate this. This really started out as a personal project for my own family, but then I ended up putting way too much effort into it, so now I can't help but try to make it usable by other people. So thanks for watching. I hope it's helpful.